welcome to our fourth breakout session for today. Hope you're having a great day so far. I would like to welcome our speaker, Liliana Vidal. Hi, Liliana.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
So, yeah, very well. How are you?
Fine.
So welcome to our conference. So I'm just going to introduce Liliana. So Liliana is an English language teacher originally from Argentina. Her interest is in neuroscience and emotional intelligence. She's been doing research focused on neurodiversity, autism, dyslexia, and other learning differences. And currently she's doing a master's degree in neuropedagogy at Nebrija University in Spain. Liliana will be talking to us about UDL, Universal Design for Learning in English Language Teaching to empower teachers. So Liliana, over to you.
Thank you. Well, we are going to start talking a bit today. The aim of the talk is to give a brief overview about Universal Design for Learning. Universal Design for Learning, we are going to just to tell you more or less what we are going to talk about, Universal Design, a bit of history, a short introduction. What is UDL? What embrace UDL, why we had to use UDL in ELT, and how to plan our classes using UDL. To start talking a bit about Universal Design for Learning, I thought about a typical situation that happens in our classes. For example, we are just correcting some papers, some homework, some tests, and the attitude, maybe we are browsing some of them correction and says, okay, what's happened with this boy? Or this, for example, Peter cannot do this exercise or that one. And we don't know what happened with him. But if we see from the lens of UDL, our question would have been, what are we doing to keep that kid from learning? Or what kind of changes do we need to make so that maybe in this case, Peter, let's say, can have access to the material in our classroom? So with this shift in our mindset is that we are going to start talking about UDL. UDL focuses or has the idea that the context really is the one that affects learning. There are no disabled students, as sometimes we say that, but the context are disabled. And if we change the context, everybody can learn. I love universal design because I think it's a ways of embracing all the students, that embracing all and also giving voice to all of them. So we are going to talk about a bit about this. So let's start with this UDL journey. A bit of history. Universal Design for Learning was created by COST in the 90s in USA. It's a Center Applied Science and Technology. And there were some of them were students from Harvard, and they started thinking how they could help students with disabilities. In this case, it's like that. And they took from architecture the 7 principles of universal design. Because in the 80s, Roland Mays, that is an architect that is in wheelchair, started thinking how buildings could be accessible so everybody can have access to them. So Universal Design for Learning took from the architecture on the lines of the 7 principles that were proposed by Roland Mays, to the learning. And at the beginning was, okay, what we can do to help students with disabilities, and they use this principle and technology. But then they started thinking, okay, why we need to make such an effort only for some students? It's not that it was not good, but the idea that maybe what we are proposing to some of the students can be helpful for everyone. So they changed this point of view. Yeah. So they started preparing or teaching or thinking just not for students with disabilities, but for everyone. So what we can do to help students with disabilities can be helpful for everyone. And they changed their point of view. So this is a bit of a history. CAS is still in United States. They have some versions of Universal Design for Learning that I will show you. The first one, that is the version has 1.0, 2.0, 2.2, and now in July, at the end of July, they are going to release the new version that is UDL 304, 3.0, sorry, and they are going to include more things connected with human beings and identity, cultures, and then we are going to talk a bit about this. So what is UDL? UDL is a scientifically valid framework. Why? Because it is based on neuroscience and cognitive psychology. They take into account the brain, how the brain works, and how knowledge is built. So it's very important. It takes into account equity. It gives students voice and choice, and it talks about a flexible curriculum. But also what is important is that they consider learners' variability. This is one of the, because in general, we used to plan our classes or to prepare our all our classes, the curriculum, everything, thinking about the average students. When we think about the average students, we leave aside the students that are the margins, the ones who maybe have problems or the ones with high capacities. So the idea is that when we plan our classes, we embrace all the students and we plan for everyone. So that's why UDL it's important, because embraces variability. So this is, I'm going to show you now with a link. As I told you before, the Universal Design for Learning is based on neuroscience. And it considers how I'm going to show a bit this. Sorry, I was reading the message. So this, I don't know if you can see, these are the guidelines that CAST proposed, because it's better to see them. And as I told you before, it was based on neuroscience. So if you see the guidelines, the guidelines are divided in 3 columns, let's say. One is green, the other is purple, and the other is blue. They are connected with the neural networks. So the first one is connected with engagement, with how we can catch the interest, or how we can hook the students' interest. The second one is how we can make the information accessible, the what of learning. And the last one is how the students show what they know. And we are talking about the strategic networks. So the first one are affective networks. The second one is recognition. The third one is strategic. So this is if we read the guidelines in a vertical way. But if we read the guidelines in the horizontal way, that we have access, build, internalize, we are talking about how the knowledge is built, and we are talking more about talking about the cognitive psychology. Nowadays, as I told you, this guideline they're going to be changed, some of them. And so that many things are going to disappear, but the main structure is the same. Because the changes that the cast made was connected with, maybe instead of having built and internalized, they're talking about learner autonomy. And you can say me, what is the aim of all this? The aim of all this is to get students that they get expert learners. What I mean by expert learners, we are not talking about students talking about intelligence or IQ or nothing. It's students or learners who are purposeful and motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, strategic, and goal-oriented. So the idea is that we have started helping our students, modifying maybe the access, for example, at the beginning, say, okay, as teacher, what I need to change to help my student, ask the question at the beginning. For example, I know that I have students with or for example, a classroom, let's say, full of, for example, decoration. And we know that this can be a threat or distraction for one of the students. Okay, so maybe if we need, this can be a problem, let's say. So I can go here to the guideline and think about this. I don't know if you could see I'm sharing the other one. Let's say if I can show, sorry, let's see if I'm sharing this. Can you see this properly? Because this is what I was sharing. Now it's better? Okay, sorry, I thought that you could see because I put a click and so here you have at the beginning. So let's see there, as I told you, the beginning, the first one, you have engagement, the vertical, the green, the purple, and the blue, and then you have the ones in horizontal that you have access, build, and internalize. Okay, sorry, I haven't read the chat before because I thought I was showing this. This is the guidelines from the cast. So there you can see, then I can share the links so you can see all the ways that you, so it's very important to think about a situation that you may have in the classroom and see how each of these guidelines and the checkpoints can help you to offer a solution. This is all these points that you have there are suggestions that can help you to help you in the class. Then maybe we can go back to that there. So universal design for learning is a framework, I told you, yeah. And it's interesting because it's not any methodology. And the idea is to design lessons, yes, that maybe free, like it says here, barrier-free and instructionally learning environments. So you create, it's a framework that helps you say, okay, I have a class, so how I can design a lesson that is barrier-free. So this framework helps you with that. And why embrace UDL in your teaching? The idea is that if you have an obstacle, a barrier helps you to lead to success. Because if you design a lesson or a class or that is free of barriers, leads you to classes, successful classes, and classes without barriers for our students. But one of the most important thing is that universal design for learning, as I told you, try to not to give equality to our classes, because if you think about equality and we think that we are giving everyone the same possibility as in this picture, everybody has, for example, let's say about text in our class, but not everybody has the possibility. But if we think about this one, that is equity, we are giving everyone what they need, yeah, and according to their possibilities. So this is what is proposed in UDL to us, giving the possibility of offering our students the possibility of reaching to everyone and according to their needs. But what is interesting is that generally what you are proposing for one student is for everyone. So this is important to think about. We are not just, it's not just a patchwork, because if you prepare a class and then you go to your classroom and you have students with some, or you know, maybe as in the example that like Peter cannot understand certain things, and you just try to solve this problem, you are using a patchwork of what you have prepared before. But the idea here is to start, you plan your lesson, you go to the axis and says, okay, what does or what do my students need? This, I have this student, Peter gets frustrated, I don't know, Thomas thinks about this, I have a dyslexic, I have students that maybe they cannot pay attention all my class and I have some problem with distractions. So I start thinking all about what my students need at the beginning, and you start planning that from the very beginning. And so you are giving them equity. Another thing that is a key to think about is that there is no average brain. There's no brain, two brains alike. And UDL thinks about that, about the possibility of planning for everyone. Again, generally, as I told you before, we plan for one size class. I don't know if someone has a question and wants to ask in the chat. I don't have problem to answer. Another important thing is about flexible curriculum. What does it mean, the flexible curriculum? What do you think that flexible curriculum mean in this context? Can you write in the chat? I don't know if you. Flexible pace. Okay, great. Given learning choices. I like. Excellent. Adapt to what is happening in the class, not fixed from the beginning. Ability to change. Good. It can be changed according to the student needs. Catering to different learning styles. Excellent. Flexibility in way of teaching. Great. Perfect. Good. Great. So look at here, for example, when we talk about the curriculum, we talk about this. To design about, okay, we have a goal. A goal can be, for example, to teach certain tenses, for example. To design a barrier-free environment with flexible curriculum, we had to create goals that are free of barriers, a material. Okay, I have the goal, for example, teaching present simple, all the standards that you have at school. Okay, so this is the goal. Okay, what kind of material are we going to use for that? And the material has to be flexible and according also to the needs. Assessment. Okay, always when we assess, we have also to be related and to the goals and always prepare the beginning, from the very beginning, and then to think about the teaching approaches that you that you are going to use to carry out this. What happens with the goals? How do you what can you tell me about the way that you can prepare goals that are for all the students? Because sometimes that is the most difficult. Think about the situation. You have a class, for example, with students, 20 students, maybe, I don't know how many students you have there, well, let's say 20, and you had to teach a reading. This is the goal, that the student can understand the reading, answer some questions, and let's say, and you have students with some disabilities, for example, students with autism or with dyslexia. You have students who don't enjoy reading. What are the goals, the material, the assessment, the barriers? Because here the most important for UDL is to design a barrier-free. So what is a barrier? A barrier can be connected with organizations, can be connected with your attitude, it can be connected with the methodological way that we are teaching. So if you have the scenario that I told you, a group of 20 students teaching, maybe you had to teach a reading, to work with a reading. How could you form the goals, the material? What could you think about all this, for example? What do you think that the barriers that you can have to build this scenario that you have, the goals, the material, the teaching approach, and assessment? Different students' competencies can be a barrier, could be a barrier. Yes, that's it. So if you think about that, you teach a reading in English, of course, with students with different, let's say, competencies, different levels, and you have students with autism, one with dyslexia, and some students do not like reading. What do you think? What are the barriers that may appear, and how would you form the goals, for example, and the material? What are the things that you would consider? Let's say, can you write in the chat that? To know the profile, well, excellent, good, that's it. The profile of the students, good. So first of all, to create all this, you need to know the students. Okay, what else, or what other barriers could you find, for example? What barriers could you find apart from the level's competencies or the need? What do you think? What kind of material, for example, would you prepare? Vision impairments. Okay, you have students, okay. Resources availability. Patrick says about that. That could be a barrier, Patrick. Do you mean that? To think about that? That maybe you cannot have. Yes, okay, thank you. So maybe one of the barriers could be that you don't have the material for that. Okay, so the material is flexible, or maybe it's for an average student, not for all of them. Good. Students interested in different topics. Good. Lack of diversification in the reading text. Good, Gabriel. Yes, that's it. So these are all the things that may appear in our classes. So the idea is here that when you start preparing your class or your curriculum and you think about that flexibility, you start thinking about all this. So you have to start thinking, okay, what the material I'm going to use? Okay, is it available, as Patrick says, is it available, or I had to prepare something different? I told you, for example, the goals, we can change the level of goals, thinking about Bloom's taxonomy and thinking how we can change the thinking about the higher order of thinking, if it's high or low. Maybe you can say, okay, remember or mark, thinking about that, the higher order of thinking, and changing the complexity of the goal, and we can offer a possibility for many. For example, you can put remember, analyze, or create. So you create the goal, giving different options. When we think about the material, sometimes the material is not always ready-made material, offers a possibility. Many books now have, for example, if you have a text and you have a student with dyslexia, for example, how to offer a flexible way, diversification of this. For example, maybe what you can do is to prepare to use a word. So maybe someone with visual impairment as one of the, you say, for example, maybe can use immersive reading to read, yeah, and to listen the text, sorry, or to provide the same with audiobooks. Thinking about the assessments also has to be flexible and design free too. And thinking about the teaching approaches, which teaching approaches do you think can go inside UDL? What is your idea, for example? For example, project-based learning, it's a possibility. Do you want to write? Great. Task-based, multiliteracy. Okay, great. Task-based for me. The good idea about, for example, collaborative learning, all the thing that is connected with, because the idea of universal design is that you can prepare classes with different arrangement, classroom arrangement, and students can work, you can give the possibility to them to work on their own, to work in groups, to work in pairs. So it's great. Dogma. Okay. Great. And teaching approaches. Good. Okay, let's see a bit about the other one. What is not UDL? And then we can come back if you want to. UDL is not special education. It's not technology instruction, and it's not the same as differentiate instructions. Yeah, and it's not a checklist. So it's very important about this. It's not the same as differentiate instruction. So any doubt up to there, or we can continue? No? Okay. Let's think about, okay, a question there. What is design-free barrier? Great, good, Leticia. A design-free barrier is, for example, as I told you before, a barrier, it can be any, the barriers can be connected with organization, can be connected with attitudes, can be connected with methodology. So to design a free barrier environment or class is to think, okay, the class that I am preparing, what are the barriers that I told you? In a situation that I told you, for example, to create maybe a class with a text with students, when you see you have students with some disabilities. To design a free barrier class is to think before, for example, well, I have a student with dyslexia. Okay, I'm going to offer him, for example, a word with a immersed reader. I'm going to offer maybe the possibility of listen to an audiobook. So offering, but not only for these students, but to everyone, yeah, the same. The interesting thing is that you're not offering only to him, it's not to everyone, yeah, and that helps to the rest too. So this is the idea. Any other doubts, or we can continue with this, for example? So, so to start planning the class, thinking about UDL, UDL is a huge topic. So then maybe I invite you to read the guidelines that I show you on the others and start thinking about all the things, because it's all the dots that you are connected with neuroscience. You have a lot of things to read, but it's really beautiful. So when we start thinking about planning, first of all, we need to know the learners and the context. UDL now in the last version 3.0 start thinking about culture. Start thinking that before it was not there, because before was the what, the why, or the why, the what, and the how of learning. But now started thinking about the who. What's happened with the identity problems. There are many countries that we have a lot of problems of identity. What's happening with the students with culture is not involved. So it's really very important to start thinking about or to consider learners and context. Yeah. Another thing is the goals. What are we here to do, for example? Okay, what are we going to, we design the goal. The goal could be, let's say, to teach present simple to our students. Okay, the class that I'm going to prepare, what are the barriers? We'll always look for barriers. What are the barriers that this goal may have? And then we start identifying the supports. UDL talks also about scaffolding, yeah? And here, again, if we are thinking about the goal, maybe to teach present simple to a group of students with different levels, let's say, or passive voice, maybe that is higher, so a group of students with different levels, how I'm going to help the students with lower level of students. For example, in this case, this is the barrier. The barrier, we have a class with students with different levels. We have a class with students with different, with the variability that the group has. What do you think are the barrier that we can find in this case, in a group of multi-level students, when you had to teach, for example, in this case, passive voice, and they don't have the level? What would you do, for example? What barriers you may find? Do you want to write? How would you create a design-free, for example, goal for them? Somebody's interested, right? Or we continue with this? No? Okay. Identifying universal supports. Let's say we had to create a scaffolding, okay, to create how we can help. But it could be the more complex form. Okay, good, Gabriela. Maybe it could be a possibility. How we are going to offer. Because if we go back to the guideline, that we can go a bit then to show some cases. One of the things that the purple part says, for example, clarify syntax or clarify symbol. So that can be a barrier for a student. So maybe in this way, we can help students to see how we can help the students with lower levels to understand, for example, passive voice, for example. In this case, that is a silly example, but just to think about that. So when we have a situation like this, we had to go to the guidelines, then we can go and see, and the guidelines suggest what we can do in these situations. Is there a max number of students in a classroom so the unit would work best? No, I don't think so. I think it's the idea is that you can help to everybody. The most important for this is that what you provide to students, what you provide for some students with some specific problems, it helps everyone. Because maybe you say, oh, maybe the other book is helpful for one student with dyslexia, but maybe the day that you give the task, one of the students has a headache, and this can be a barrier. So the audiobook can be better for him and not reading, for example. So the idea is that the support that you offer can help others. That's why is universal. The other use of guideline is it says use UDL guidelines to design learning. And the other one is to teach, evaluate, and revise. UDL offers that when we plan the class to use this iterative, it's an iterative process, because we are all the time revising. We propose something, we know the students, we create the goals, we identify the barriers, then we think, okay, these are the barriers, the supports that I'm going to use. Why or why not? Which one? For everyone that may help. And then you go to the guideline, you look at this, you teach, you evaluate, and again, you revise. Was it useful or not? What I need to improve this. But with the idea always of having someone, not having one specific student in mind, but thinking about everyone. That if you offer one, the support for one student may help others. For example, if you think about executive function and thinking about planning, sometimes students with dyslexia, with autism, need to have some kind of anticipation, need to have an agenda. So, for example, one of the main goals to design, for example, an environment that is barrier-free would be to have an agenda, a poster, for example, in the classroom. So that could help them to have some kind of participation, to know what they're going to know to do. So you lower the anxiety, and this is useful for them, but maybe useful for others, because everybody knows in the classroom that the agenda is there, for example. This is one of the things, or one of the universal supports that you can use, for example. Am I clear up to there? Any doubts that we can continue with other things? I don't know if someone wants to write something. I love interacting with you because sometimes it's better to have, if you have doubts, if you have things there that you want to ask. Great. Not for now. Okay. I can carry on. Great. Okay. Let's go. We are going to show a bit now before we a bit the guidelines again. To talk about a bit about this, so then we can summarize. To show you a bit more about this. For example, as I told you, the columns, that one is, for example, thinking about a student with dyslexia, for example, that we may have, as I told you, help to everyone. Let's say, okay, I'm going to teach a student with visual impairment, for example. I'm going to teach a reading. So I know that this is a barrier for me. I need to provide some help or some scaffolding for this person. So I go to the guidelines here, and can you see the guidelines now? Yeah. You can see, for example, perception. The UDL says provide option for perceptions. For perception. So you can go here, and one of the things that the UDL says is, for example, if you have visual impairment, offer alternatives for auditory information, offer alternatives for visual information. So these are the suggestions. Maybe what you can do is, what you are providing a topic, you can provide in different ways, so you can reach to all the students. Or, for example, as in the case that we were talking about, passive voice structure. For example, if you see here in the second part, it says provide options for language and symbols, clarify vocabulary and symbols, clarify sentence and structure. Think about, for example, in a class that you are teaching food, for example, and you have students with, and you want to teach a recipe, for example, and the recipe can be full of new vocabulary and symbols, kilogram, pound. So this can be a barrier too. So what is, you can come here, you can go, for example, you can touch, and UDL helps you here, for example, and it says pre-teach vocabulary, provide graphic symbols, embedded support. So it gives all this for you to think about that. These points are called the checkpoints, clarify vocabulary and symbols. Yeah. So it's interesting to go to this part too, so you can see. And the other thing that I was telling you is connected with how the students show their knowledge, and here you have the blue one, yeah. That this is one of the changes that UDL is doing now, yeah. That you have only executive function in these parts in the here, but they consider that it's all in this part the executive function works, and I agree with that. So this is one of the main changes that I'm going to do now. I will continue showing now the presentation. And the last part that I want to show you, it's what is the difference, what is the connection with second language acquisition. And if you think about many things, you say, well, but in English we do many of the things, and it's true, because we provide visual aids to students, we provide many cases auditory information, maybe that in other subject we don't do. But also UDL principles are highly competitive with, for example, comprehensible input, output, with affective filter, with a collaborative learning. Also, amplify the effect of your ESL instruction practices. Integrating UDL helps you to work with our students better. So to make it kind of wrap up, and for me that is important, is that if you have a student, I think if you change your context, everybody can learn. It doesn't matter maybe in the level that they are, and you can provide them some scaffolding to help them to reach their goals according to their needs. I think this is the most important. Think about the variability of students. They're all different, and they can learn in their own way. There is a question here. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions here to wrap up a bit of this.
Thank you so much, Liliana. Perhaps if you could tell us, so thank you for introducing UDL framework to us and to our participants. If you could comment on, is this framework something that is already being introduced on teacher training courses? Are teachers taught about this framework, and are teachers on initial teacher training qualification programs? Are teachers introduced to this framework and encouraged to use it when planning their lessons and courses?
For example, in USA they use quite a lot, for example, UDL. In Argentina, I live near a place that is called Rosario, and it's not part of the subject, but they started introducing the topic to the students. Like here in Argentina, it's like just starting, but I think it's, at least for me, because I love the topic, it's a good way of reaching to all the students, and it's the best way to embrace variability, in the students. But I think it's one of the next move that we had to do.
And you said that UDL is not differentiation. So, briefly, how would you compare using the UDL framework and introducing differentiation in class? Like, what are what's the main difference?
Because the main difference is that when you differentiate, you just think about the students that may have a problem. Here, UDL is that what you are using to these students with some disability or with some problem, let's say, may help others. That's what is universal, because it's for everyone. And you are often offering to everyone, and the ones who need to use it, they use it or not, the scaffolding that you are proposing. So this is the main difference between one and the other.
Thank you. And there is a comment from one of our participants around a teacher's workload. Will this add to teachers' workload? Will this require sort of extra work? And as we all know, teachers have quite limited time. Perhaps there isn't that much preparation time in their schedule. So will this add to teachers' workload?
This is the feeling that we always have now, that it's overwork for us. The problem that maybe when you start thinking about maybe the ready-made material, what you can do is to see, okay, think about the material and what's are the barriers again that this material can have, and maybe to support that in another way. For example, in a text nowadays, for example, many texts have, for example, text for dyslexic people that maybe you can use instead of the other, or to offer the student both, or this kind of thing, to give choice to the students to help that. I know that it's extra work in some, but I think it's the most important is that as you plan from the very beginning, you can start. You don't need to make a patchwork after that. So you solve the problem from the very beginning. You prepare everything so the student can understand, and then you just give support to the specific things.
Yeah.
I think this
so
is the main.
It's almost like you do the sorry. It's almost like what you said. It means you do the extra work first, and then you benefit from it long term, or the students benefit from it, and perhaps it will require less remedial work in the next stages.
The idea is that to avoid the remedial work, to think about from the very beginning, so people can students or learners can work on that, so they start. Because on the other way, you had just to use that remedial work in specific situations, and it's not the idea. You have two parallel curriculums in that way.
Yeah.
And the idea is to avoid that.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Liliana. It was lovely to have you here with us, and thank you for your presentation.